Hi, happy Tuesday, and welcome back to Online Learning. I know so many of you are just super excited. To those of you who've remained online, this is nothing new. So today's discussion is going to cover Islam. So for those of you who were in person the last few days before school switched back to online, you guys should have at least the beginning portion of this note outline information, so you can fast forward to the section that you need. The rest of you, you're going to start at the beginning. So let's get started. So Islam is a very controversial topic for some students. It makes them uncomfortable. My goal is to strictly give you the facts. So this is from a historical perspective, going over the history of Islam through primary sources, through historians, through textbooks, okay? So, pre-Islamic Arabia, the Arabian Peninsula was largely deserts, and it was inhabited by the nomadic Bedouin tribes. So they were pastoralists, essentially, who kept herds of sheep, goats, and camels. They were organized in family or clan groups, so kinship groups, and they were polytheistic at the time. So they had multiple gods, but some of these people were practicing Jews or Christians, or Jews or Christians lived in nearby cities that these people interacted with. They had a very active trade with cities like Mecca and Medina, and routes were connected to the Silk Roads, the Persian Gulf, the Red Sea. They were basically in the perfect central spot for all these different trade routes coming together. They exchanged not only goods, but also culture and ideas. Now remember, this is a video, so should I be talking too quickly or you get distracted, you have to grab a snack, whatever the case may be, you can simply pause it and then come back to it when you're ready. So the Jewish and Christian connections to Islam is that all three religions are monotheistic. They all believe in one God. So Allah, which is the name of the Islamic God, is the same God as the God of the Hebrews and the same God as the Christians. And they believed in Islam that only Allah is the one true God. Muhammad will present himself like an earlier prophet, for example, like Abraham, Moses, or if you're talking about the Jewish faith, Jesus. Remember, that's a big difference between the Hebrews, or the Jewish people, and Christians. Christians believe Jesus was the living Son of God, and Jews believe he was just a prophet. They're still waiting for the Messiah. All three religions will demand social justice and lay out laws on how to achieve it. Now, this will be a revolutionary religion at the time, and it's not going to be accepted in the beginning. Membership will be based on belief, not birth. So the Ummah is a term that describes the congregation or the collective community of the faithful. So the Ummah will break away from earlier tribal structures. Meaning, basically this religion will be viewed as if you want to believe, you practice, you join the religion, and it's not necessarily hereditary. It's not passed down from generation to generation. So simply because my parents were this, now I am that. They're going to be established as a state from the very beginning. So Muhammad will not only be the religious leader, but he'll also be the political and the military leader. There's no professional clergy, and there will be no division between religious law and civil law. This is still practiced today. And when we get to Sharia law, we'll get into more specifics. So Muhammad's new religion, but who was Muhammad? Muhammad was a man who was orphaned at 6 years old and raised by his uncle. He was very honest, and he became a very successful merchant in trade, specifically with caravans. He's going to marry a wealthy widow and then become even more successful. Along his trade routes and his business interactions, Muhammad is going to come into contact with people of the Jewish faith and the Christian faith. So he'll be introduced to this idea of a monotheistic religion. And in 610 AD or CE, God will speak to him while he's meditating in a cave outside of Mecca. And according to their stories, their religious rites, Muslims believe that God spoke through the voice of the Archangel Gabriel. And so if you guys remember from Christianity specifically, the Archangel Gabriel was the same angel who appeared to the Blessed Mother and announced that, hey, God wants you to carry the Son of Man in your womb. And Mary said, fiat or yes. So at this time in 610, Muhammad, who's around I think he's in his 40s around this time, he's going to receive revelations, and he's going to set these down in what will later be called the Quran. The Quran is their holy text. So there's a prophetic tradition, that stems with this religion, meaning Islam is going to believe in the prophets that came before. So the same prophets of the Jewish, the Hebrew faith, and the Christian faith. So they will believe in Adam and Noah, Abraham, Moses, and again, Jesus, if you're talking about the Hebrews. The difference here is they will believe that Muhammad is the last of the prophets. And when I say they, I'm talking about Muslims. Muslims is the name for people who practice Islam. So the religion is called Islam. The people who practice it are known as Muslim. Now the Quran is their holy text. It contains the Word of God, and it is comprised of 114 surahs, or chapters. It was originally written in Arabic. And then in addition to the Quran, you have the Hadith, which is sayings by Muhammad. It's essentially a guide to moral living. And then you have the Sharia Islamic law. Sharia law is still practiced today. So an overview of what their religion looks like. They are very strict monotheist. They only believe in one God. They believe in the same God as the Jews and the Christians, which they call Allah. They believe that the Torah and the Bible, like the Quran, is the Word of God. And they refer to non-Muslim people who believe in the same God as Islam as the people of the book, or the dhimmi. So whenever you hear or see anything that refers to the dhimmi or peoples of the book, it's another term used to describe Jews and Christians. Now there are 5 pillars of Islam. There is faith. There's no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. They believe in prayer. So all Muslims are required to pray 5 times a day facing Mecca, specifically the building known as the Kaaba, which is this black box building in the center of the photo. And we'll talk more about the Kaaba in just a few slides. They believe in almsgiving, or tithing, as you might be more familiar with it. It's giving charity to the poor, specifically in a financial way. They believe in fasting, so they will fast during holy days. A great example is Ramadan. And fasting, like Christians or Hebrews, is basically you abstain from eating food or certain drink for a certain amount of hours or certain time period. And it's in reverence and respect to God, and it's also offering up that suffering in unity with God's suffering. Specifically with Christianity, Jesus' suffering on the cross. The last pillar of Islam is known as the Hajj. And it is a requirement that all Muslims make a pilgrimage to the Kaaba, which is located in Mecca in the Middle East. So they have to go to this building at least once in their lifetime, if possible. So if they cannot financially afford it, obviously, there's some stipulations there, but they believe that all Muslims are required to make a pilgrimage here at least once in their lifetime. Now, there is a 6th quote-unquote pillar of Islam known as the jihad. This is not widely recognized by most Muslims. It's a very radical group that believes in the jihad. And we'll talk about that more right now. So jihad is considered the 6th pillar of Islam, although, again, I need to emphasize it is not commonly practiced amongst all Muslims. It's referred to as a holy struggle, or to strive to follow the path of Allah. Now there's a greater jihad and a lesser jihad. The greater jihad is this inner struggle against evil. So think of it as temptation and concupiscence. So this inner desire from original sin that we are just driven to commit sins. Like we can't help it, it's in our nature. This lesser jihad is known as an outward fighting. In practice, in theory, and in practice, it is only meant to be for self-defense. So they are going to use jihad as reasoning behind wars of conquest for conversion specifically. Now, unfortunately, like with most groups, there are radicals who take this idea to a very, very far extreme. So there's a very small group of people known as jihadists who believe that in order to convert, they must conduct warfare and kill in the name of Allah in order to spread and preserve Islam. This is not the common practice of the Islamic faith. I just need to reiterate that. This is not officially the 6th pillar. It is a small group of radicals that believe it is. So the spread of Islam, as it was mentioned, I think a few slides before, Islam is quickly not only going to become a religion, but it will also become a state, an empire, essentially. So now we're going to get into some of the details. So Muhammad and the Kaaba. The Kaaba is a cube-shaped building located in Mecca. Mecca was a trading city. So at the time of Muhammad's life, before Islam became a religion, the Kaaba was this center of pilgrimage where these Bedouin tribesmen, these nomadic peoples, would come to worship their many idols, their many gods. And so they'd have statues lining the inside and the outside of the building. And so people would come from far and wide to trade, to pray to their gods. It was basically a huge tourist attraction as well. So Muhammad is going to have these visions and have God speak to him in 610. And then he's going to go to the Kaaba and he's going to claim the Kaaba for Islam and say, you shouldn't be worshiping these polytheistic gods. You need to be worshiping one God, Allah, who's the true God. Now, Allah was one of the many depictions of these Bedouin tribesmen. And so he said Allah is actually the only God who's actually real, who's true. So as you can imagine, if this is a trading city with a lot of foot traffic coming in and out, people were very concerned about their income, their economy. They were worried that if Muhammad was successful in claiming the Kaaba for one God, Allah, that would change the religious practice of all these tribesmen, and people wouldn't want to come there anymore, which means they wouldn't want to trade, which means money wouldn't be flowing in. So what happens is, over the course of a few years, Muhammad keeps preaching and preaching, and eventually these merchants are going to force him out of town, and they're going to threaten his life. So getting into more details, which I just basically summarized for you, Allah is the one true God according to Muhammad, and he will proclaim this to all the merchants. This will anger the merchants of Mecca. They make a lot of money from the pilgrimages to this cube box building here. So basically they're going to think it's going to decrease pilgrimages. All these white dots, by the way, these are all people. So these are crowds of Muslim people going to pray. As I mentioned, Muhammad will flee because his life will be threatened. So he will go from Mecca to Medina, which is located in modern-day Saudi Arabia. And this flight from Mecca to Medina is known as the Hijrah. Muhammad will gain followers in Medina. He's going to also build up a very strong military and become a very powerful military and political leader. He will return to Mecca with 10,000 of his troops, and Mecca will be forced to surrender. At which point, Muhammad will go to the Kaaba, smash all of the false idols, claiming it for Allah. So as you can see, this is a larger picture now. It's a giant mosque built around the Kaaba. The Kaaba is the small little black box in the far corner. This artwork here is a depiction of Muhammad going and smashing all of the idols for Allah. So again, these are people. These little white dots are all people praying towards the Kaaba. Now, Muhammad will die in 632, and he will have successors that take over. The first 4 successors are known as the rightly guided caliphs. Now, caliph is a title used to explain their leadership role. It's like emperor or king. It is their title. So you will have the first 4 rulers of the Islamic world after the death of Muhammad, known as the rightly guided caliphs. The first caliph is known as Abu Bakr. He was one of the original followers of Muhammad, and also, I believe, Muhammad's father-in-law. So he was actually a relative of Muhammad. The fourth caliph, Ali, is going to be Muhammad's cousin and son-in-law of Muhammad. Ali will be assassinated, which will lead to a division in the Islamic faith. So at this point, we see a division between the Sunni. We see a split, and they split into 2 groups, either the Shia or the Sunni. Now, the Shia believed that family members of Muhammad should serve as the caliph or the leader. So they're going to support the descendants of Ali, who was, if you remember, assassinated. The Sunni, on the other hand, are going to be successors to the caliphate should they be chosen from among the Ummah. So even though Abu Bakr was the father-in-law, he wasn't a blood relative of Muhammad. He was just a member of the faith. So the Ummah, or the community of Muslim believers, believed that the leaders should be chosen amongst themselves, not necessarily having a blood relationship to Muhammad. This will cause a great division that still lasts today. So the Islamic Empire, which we're going to get into greater detail in further or later units, I should say, it's going to grow, and it's going to include all or parts of Egypt, Rome, the Byzantine Empire, the Persian Empire, Mesopotamia, and Indian civilizations. So they're going to have quite an expansion of territory. Many of these people will convert to Islam. Many of them will convert out of choice, not necessarily being forced to. This will lead to a spread of culture and language. So, 1 year after Muhammad's death, the Arabian Peninsula will be united under the banner of Islam. This will be huge because if you remember, previously, they were a bunch of nomadic tribesmen. So they were Bedouin tribes that basically governed themselves. When this happens, a new level of political organization will occur, and there's going to be strong ties to the Ummah, or the Muslim community. The Persian and Byzantine empires were weakened by long wars with each other and internal revolts, which is going to make it easy for the Islamic Empire to come and take over. So we're going to see defeats of the Sassanid Empire in 650. They're going to take half of the Byzantium, or the Byzantine Empire. In the 700s, most of Spain will be conquered. They will also reach the Indus River, and in 751, they will crush a Chinese army at the Battle of Talas River, but that's where they will be stopped. They won't expand further into China. Now again, what are these motivations for expansion? We're looking at that quote-unquote sixth pillar of Islam, or the jihad. Well, there was a lot of reasons why they wanted to expand their territory. Economically, if you have control over the trade routes, you have control over the money. So they were really concerned with trade and agriculture. These are desert people who are not familiar with agriculture. So basically, in order to get any kind of grain or crops, they had to trade animals in exchange for that. So if they control the farming, they don't have to pay anymore for grain, barley, wheat, things like that. There was an individual drive, so people individually sought personal wealth and glory. The community thought it would help hold together the Islamic faith if everyone was conquered under one empire. And again, for religious reasons, bringing righteous government to the conquered. So leading and ruling in the name of Allah. So as you can see, this is the expansion of the Islamic Empire throughout the years. So major battles are noted here as like little firecracker pops. I don't know what you want to call those. But an overview of the Islamic Empire in the beginning, at least. There are 3 caliphs that we're going to discuss and will be on your comp, not your pre-comp. So you first have the 4 rightly guided caliphs. At this point, at the end of the 4th caliph, you see Islam splitting into the Sunnis and the Shia. You should be writing this down in your notes. Then you have the Umayyad Caliphate, which will take over from 661 to 750. We're now in more modern times. So we're no longer in BC, we're in AD. BCE to CE. We're now in CE, AD, whatever you prefer to use. In the Umayyad Caliphate, they're going to move the capital to Damascus, and Arabs will be seen as superior to other converts. This information here is comp material, so I would make sure you have this written down. This is their hierarchy of people in the Islamic Empire. So Arab Muslims are the very, very first. They're the top of those social classes. Then you have converts to Islam, followed by the dhimmi, and if you don't remember what the dhimmi are, they are the people of the book. And lastly, slaves. So once the Umayyad Caliphate is taken over by the Abbasid Caliphate, the Abbasids were going to move the capital to Baghdad and reign over the golden age of Islamic empire, or culture, The Umayyad Caliphate, their capital will be in Damascus, Syria. Their focus is on Arabic ethnicity. They'll have an inferior status assigned to converts. So they're still higher than people of the book, but they are inferior to Muslim Arabs. They will respect the people of the book. The dhimmis are the protected people, Jews, Hebrews, Christians, whatever you want to call them, but they will be forced to pay taxes. So if you remember, one of the pillars of Islam is the almsgiving or tithe. In order to make sure they were still getting that revenue from non-Muslim people, there was a special tax that people of the book had to pay. There will be riots among the general population that will bring down the dynasty, the Umayyad Caliphate. This opens the door for the Abbasids to step in. They will put the capital in Baghdad, and they will assign equal status for converts. Trade will increase. There will be a preservation of learning of the Greek, Roman, and Persian literature, heritage, culture. They're basically known for saving Western civilization. I shouldn't say saving it, but I should say preserving it. They're going to also adopt different cultural ideas. For example, they're going to incorporate the number system of 0 through 9 in India, which will become known as the Arabic numerals. So, the Abbasid in Islam. During this time, we see the golden age of Islamic culture, which leads to architecture and all these different mystics. So, minarets are these towers to call for prayer. That's what these are. So men would climb to the top and they would sound the horn or shout saying it's time to pray. Mosques will become their places of worship. And then we see the mystics, which are like monks. So they're going to devote their lives specifically to the mystical, philosophical idea of Islam. And I think we're going to leave, we'll stop there for today. Make sure well, we're almost done. Let's finish up. We're almost done. So Sufism is this branch of Islam. It's not its own separate thing. It's more of a mystical side of it. The leaders of the Sufi movement are known as sheikhs. And it's going to begin in the 9th to 10th century, and they will react to materialism. So like the Buddhist monks believe, or the Buddhists in general believe, that all life is suffering caused by desire, Sufism will develop out of this materialistic viewpoint, meaning people want to have a lot of things. I want to have a nice house, a handsome husband, I want to have a nice car, right? Well, Sufism is going to say that you don't need all these material goods. Instead, you should be focusing on a personal relationship with God. So these people will dedicate themselves to fasting, prayer, and meditation. So we're not going to focus on these document questions. I'm pretty sure, I think I might have left these in your notes. You will not see Rumi's poetry on your comp or pre-comp, so you can cross that section out of your notes if I fail to remove that. So that is, a brief introduction to the Islamic empires. As I mentioned, we will revisit them again later, but I just wanted to give you that overview. So with that, thanks for watching, staying tuned, and I will see you guys soon.